the Codex Trujillo del Perú. And this is a very special and unique codex because it is all watercolors. There's no text really, just to describe. There, are indexes to describe the watercolors that you see, and it's basically a 9-volume diary of a census that was put together by the Codex of Trujillo, by the Bishop of Trujillo in Peru, in the late 18th century. Let's see. Here he is. This is the Bishop Baltasar Jaime Martínez Compañón, and you can see his humble pose here. This is one of the watercolors from the Codex. And we'll tell you a little bit about him first before we get into the Codex, because he's an interesting character. As you can see, he was born in Spain in 1737 and died in Bogota, in Colombia, in 1797. He was an ambitious, hardworking young man, ordained a priest at 24, and soon after received a doctorate in canon law. And as he was working his way up the ladder, Charles III sent him to Lima to become the cantor of the Lima Cathedral. Now, we're not sure whether he actually was so well versed in music or not, but this was a high clerical position, so he had other people who were doing the job of cantor, and then there was an organist, and he organized this way. And then in 1778, he was appointed the bishop of the region of Trujillo in Peru. Here he is again. And it's interesting, we find that he has written to Charles III because he really wants to tour the region, the archdiocese, and see what is in this place. And so he writes in a letter. He said, they always, when you see these letters from Monteverdi or from bishops to kings, they always ingratiate themselves very carefully in order to get what they want. And he says, "No one understands better than you, Your Majesty, how important for good government, both spiritual and temporal, is a complete and precise knowledge of the geography and natural history of the peoples and in the places that govern them." So he presents his case. He wants to tour the region and see what is to be found there. And in fact, he does get the go-ahead from King Charles. So this is a census. And he goes throughout all the regions that exist in Trujillo, in the archdiocese, which include, it's a treacherous journey. He's going to the seaside, he's going through jungles, he's going through mountains, to discover what the people are like, and what are the customs of the people in this region. And so he sends people before him, and people were expected to answer a questionnaire, literally a census. And so they were supposed to tell him what the education was like, how healthy the people were that lived there, what is the nature like in the surroundings, what are the agricultural activities, are they mining, what is the spirituality of the people, and as you can imagine, because it's this hybrid time where everyone's supposed to be Christian, but of course people are coming from different religions, different places, and so they want to know what makes these people tick. And they're also very interested in the artisanal nature of the people that live there. What is it that they do? Do they make pottery? Do they have looms? Which you'll see. There's a lot of that in the second volume. And so this was a 32-month voyage. So they first sent people before him to ask the questions and have these things, have them answered. And then the bishop himself would show up. And he not only represented, he's the highest ranking member of the clergy that any of them have ever seen, but also he represents the king and the queen of Spain. And this is very interesting to all of the people that he comes in contact with, because there are paintings of them, and people just know them as celebrities in a way. And so a lot of times they would be greeted with people in the village in their finery singing hymns and singing songs to the king and queen. And the bishop himself, Compañón, travels with a retinue of very skilled people, clergy, but also draftsmen and musicians who could listen and take down the music by ear, and map people who are skilled in cartography so that they could draw the maps of where they went. And so he had, today we would just take our iPhone out and snap a picture and hit record and have everything live for us. But at this time, it's really an extraordinary example of it's like a culture that is caught in amber. So there it is. It's not a composer. It's not, you don't find a manuscript of Bach and you see, oh, look at his handwriting and look what he did and what was he thinking. This instead is filtered through the ears and the eyes of the bishop and of the retinue that he traveled with. So it's a really unique codex. Here, this is from the codex. This is the region of the archdiocese here on the left, and then upper right you see the center of Trujillo, the city proper, and then some more another map from the codex down on the bottom. And just to give you a little context, this was what the Americas looked like in 1780. And you can see how the Viceroyalty of Peru goes all the way down through Chile and some parts of Bolivia as well. And here, of course, is a modern day map just to show for context. So 9 volumes. He gathers all this information. In the meantime, as he's still on the voyage, Charles III dies, and then we have Charles IV. So he puts this all together for Charles IV, who frankly didn't ask for it. And he painstakingly puts all these together, a really thorough census. And luckily, he also made a copy. Can you imagine? This is by hand, all these watercolors. And there's a copy in Bogota, and then there was the copy that was sent to Spain, which was basically taken and put away and ignored for centuries. And it isn't until the 20th century that it's found again, and here we are again. These images that have been really just stuck in a box without the history, the hundreds of years of history that have existed since then. So the volume that we're going to be particularly interested in today is the second volume, which is the one that contains 20 pieces of music. But just to let you know, the 9 volumes contain more than 1,400 watercolors and these 20 pieces of music, which were taken down from dictation, and also, the lyrics were written in, and these were not only in Spanish, but also in different indigenous languages, Quechua, Mochica, and they're beautiful. I'll show them to you. The first volume was mostly maps and portraits, and the portraits of all the bishops that preceded Compañón. And then architectural plans and statistics on the populations. And the second codex, which is the one we'll look at mostly today, more maps and plans, and a table of all the languages that were spoken in the archdiocese. Full-length portraits of people in all the castes. They were very interested in all the different kinds of people that could be found and labeling them. And then scenes from everyday life, and work, hunting, fishing, music, dances, people playing instruments. Volumes 3 and 4 are mostly, they're all flora, fruits, fruit trees, vines, palms, herbs, 351 images in all, very beautiful. Volume 5 is medicinal herbs, this is interesting too, because they not only paint the herbs, but they tell you their name, and you see what they're used to treat for. Volume 6, insects, reptiles, and vermin, 104 watercolors. Volume 7 are the birds, all birds. 8 is marine fauna, and then finally 9 is a study of ruins and mummies and different kind of textiles. So that is a quite thorough census. So here I just wanted to show you a few of the herbs. This one is the aiwanyu. This is the megues, which was used to treat the French disease, or venereal disease. And here we have the ayahuasca. And ayahuasca, which is kind of trendy these days among people who are interested in taking a little trip. So this is a hallucinogen, and the ayahuasca plant is often tied to the image of the snake. And here is the snake, double-headed snake. You have a creature in the bottom head and a monkey in the top head, and then a real close-up of the leaf, so you know what it looks like. And then here's a guy, he almost looks like he's drinking out of a mate gourd, and he's looking up in wonder at this amazing plant, and you wonder if the artist is the guy, having this trip and seeing the snake. Is the snake, it's a very fun image to contemplate. And now here we will come to our beloved Volume 2, which is devoted to cultural activities and working and card games and sports and then the music. So here we have a little scene that is several watercolors in a row describing from start to finish the incredible textile work that was done in this region. So it's kind of funny to me that it actually goes in this order. Here's the shepherd who is fast asleep. The dogs are playing, not really paying attention. The sheep are there, but they're also not paying much attention either. And the very next image is the shepherdess, and like everybody is at attention. The dogs are looking at her. She's awake. She's on it. The sheep are looking at her. There's even another guy in the picture. I don't know. I thought that was that can't be a mistake. And then you're moving on. I skipped some because it's really quite detailed, but you see how they're washing the wool and then boiling the wool, and then on the bottom left they're dyeing the wool, and then up above you see a woman who's starting to knit with her, watching the baby on one side and knitting. And then here is quite complex, a woman at this loom and this beautiful textile work being done, and even her clothing is It's interesting and artistic, thought out. And then we come to the games. Here they're having a cockfight, and it looks like they're gambling. The people are in a circle. There's somebody manning the door. I mean, and there are still cockfights today here in New York City. I don't know that it's legal, but it certainly happens. And in the Caribbean, so it's still something that is done today. And we have these gentlemen with balls and paddles, and folks playing cards. And then, you know, like a cross between maybe field hockey, but with a larger ball. And as you can see, that not everything is in perspective. You know, so they were first sketch artists, and then the watercolors were made. And in this volume, the 37 images of dancers and musicians, and these 20 transcribed musical works. In some of the literature, I can't remember which person said this, but that this codex is like, when you leaf through the codex, it's like watching a documentary film on colonial Peru. It's really remarkable in that way. And so here we hope and pray that the images and the videos will remain. So here's an example of the music making with the dancers, and these are indigenous in their costumes. You can see the headdresses. You can see that there are bells probably on their ankles, which is not unlike Morris dancing in the British Isles. You see someone playing a hand drum, and then you see a pipe and tabor there, you know, where the one-man band of playing the pipe and hitting the drum. And this is an example of the music. You can see how neat it is. And there's a lead singer, and then there's harmony here. And well, actually, it's unison. And it tells you that it should be allegro, and it's a cachua, which is a kind of a dance that was done with holding hands for voice and bass instrument on the birth of Jesus our Lord. And here is an example of a Baroque guitar. You can see the neck is back like this, and a fiddle who playing in Baroque style, right, down here, and no chin rest, and these two dancers. All right, let's see. Either we will hear that piece, or we will hear a piece for harp and violin. Oh, good. All right, it's the piece that you just saw.
Denos la esencia, señores, denos la esencia, señores, supuesto que es noche buena para cantar y bailar al uso de nuestra tierra, al uso de nuestra tierra. Hi-ya-ya, 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 hi-ya-ya. Denos presencia, Señor, denos presencia, Señor, solo esta que es noche buena para cantar y bailar al uso de nuestra tierra, al uso de nuestra tierra.
I'm glad that worked. That was a group that called the Bishop's Band, who's was founded by Tom Zajac, which some of you may know him. He was an incredible multi instrumentalist and scholar, and was like a brother to me and a mentor for sure. He's the one who introduced me to this codex, and we formed a band together called the Bishop's Band, which was to be dedicated to the music of colonial Latin America, and named the Bishop's Band after this bishop because our first show together was what you just saw from the codex. And for those of you in the Bay Area, you might have recognized Jenny Ellis Campani singing with me on the soprano line. And what Tom did was arranged it for that part that you saw for two voices. He arranged it in 4-part harmony, and then we added as many instruments as you saw there, added percussion parts, and filled it out, you know, with historical performance practice in mind, but gleaning the music from the codex. And what's interesting, of course, is that any kind of music that you see, you take it off the page and it becomes something else. But really, when you're working with something that's such raw material, you know, it has not had the journey of musicians playing it for 200 years. So you'll see in many of these performances how different people have chosen to interpret them. This is called this watercolor is called the dance of the Chimo. And this is from the Chimo region. So these are the typical costumes of the Chimo Indians. And you see this harp, which is a single strung harp, and then again the Baroque fiddle. And what we did for this was we had Carlos Fitante of Balam Dance Theater choreographed dances to go with these pieces. This next piece, Baile del Chimo, played by Robert Mealy, who some of you may know also, and Paula Fagerberg on the harp, is pretty true to the way it was written, and there is a marking that it should be maestoso. For those of you who know Robert, Robert is one of our finest violinists in the country, possibly in the world, of Baroque style. And so he took the melody and then he interpreted it as any Baroque musician would, so beautifully. And that performance was in 2013 at the Hispanic Society of America, which is up on 155th Street and Broadway. Of course, it's closed now, but it's really one of the jewels of New York City. So if you ever come and visit, or if you're here, you should come and see the magnificent Goya that will greet you as you walk into the museum. This is a close-up of something that's called it's labeled the Dance of the Devils. You can see a Baroque guitar and this kind of I think it's a cow jaw that's being used as a guiro, if you know that instrument from Caribbean music, which kind of sounds like and then the box is called the cajita, and that's a little drum that is being played. You can see these are spikes there on their heels, but also are probably some kind of percussive element, so that when they dance, that is part of the musical experience. And there's a whole series of these watercolors of these people in costumes that are celebrating Carnival. So these are the devil costumes for Carnival. And the next piece is in Quechua, the language of Quechua, which is the kind of the language of the Inca. And it's called the Tonada del Chimo, another Chimo piece for two voices, and tamboril para bailar cantando. So it's supposed to be sung while dancing, or danced while singing, rather. And what's interesting about this piece is when you see the music, there's actually a percussion part written out in half notes, you know, and it says tamboril. And then there are two voices that that sing. And I'll tell you, for those of you that don't speak Quechua, the translation. And he who speaks with you in their soul reaches me, so they say. And as you say, if they say it while weeping, you will come to the soul and the body, and the soul will be present in the body. Then they get into a little more straightforward. The blood of our Lord Jesus Christ was spilled for me, and that there's the Father has forgiven us. This performance is by the group Música Temprana, who's directed by Adrián Rodríguez van der Spoel, who has written a fantastic book on the Codex del Trujillo. Here is another watercolor with a great example of the performance practice of the day. You can see that this is a kind of a lute and the harp. And what's interesting is that you see this guy kneeling at the bottom of the harp, playing on the harp. So it's a percussive, becomes a percussive instrument with strings, and this helps the dancers. There are dancers kind of down on the bottom, but this was to help the dancers to keep the beat. If you're dancing and you hear, you can imagine you're outside. If anybody's ever been at an early music concert outside that wasn't mic'd, it's hard to hear the lute and the harp, maybe you'll hear the strings more loudly. So this is quite practical, that there's somebody just like keeping the rhythm so that the dancers and the musicians are together. And then I learned of another practice from a friend and colleague, Lauri Gutierrez, who has a group called Rumba Rocco in Boston. And she's Venezuelan, and she said that if the music is really great, sometimes somebody will come to the bottom of the harp and start to, percuss on it as a way of saying, you're on fire, this is great. So I love that. Maybe he's doing both, but practically, this is to aid in keeping the dancers and the musicians together. The next piece, Lanchas para Bailar, is performed by this group called Como Era un Principio. And it is, they're in modern guitars, but it is absolutely as written. It is played note for note, rhythm for rhythm, as written, nothing extra except for this incredible maraca player who you will see. But interesting to see this group with modern instruments playing it. The next watercolor you see kind of more aristocratically dressed gentleman dancing while playing. The lute player is dancing while playing, and then we're introduced to some of these wind instruments. And this next piece, which is number 19 in the 20 pieces, it's called El Huicho Nuevo, which is supposed to be sung and danced at the same time, and it's dedicated to the Virgin Carmen of Ciudad de Trujillo, performed by the Capilla de Indias. And I'll read to you the translation. And this has a very catchy refrain to na 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 na. No human understanding can sing your glories today, and so it suffices to say that you are the Mother of God. Na 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 na. In the Spirit of God the Father, you were chosen as Mother of the Word that became man by your union with our flesh. You are one being with several holy names, but on Mount Carmel you are refuge and shelter for the souls. In purgatory, it is your cloak that controls the fire. For the one who calls on you as Mother, and on Saturday, you save him. Man gets no help unless he begs for it, for by praying to you he is freed from the judgment of God. You show ever more mercy to those who call upon you. Since we are your sons, take us to your fatherland. A devout person who worships and praises you can rely on his reward, for you are merciful Mother. So there is no one who, even though a slave, will not be freed in the end from the sorrows of this life if he serves you with conviction.
Basta decir que eres la madre de Dios, y solo basta decir que eres la madre de Dios. Llena tu ocasiones varias, pero en el Carmen refugio y consuelo de las almas, pero en el Carmen refugio y con Dios. ira de la sentencia pasada, pues por tus juegos se libra de Dios. Al que te clama, y pues que somos tus hijos, llévanos a tu patria, y pues que somos tus hijos, llévanos a Dios. Que a celebrar se te inclina, lleva el premio más seguro, como quieres, madre mía, lleva el premio más seguro, adiós. Quien siendo esclavo al fin no se vea libre de las penas de esta vida sin monas, cierto te sirve de las penas de esta vida sin por Dios.
It's very moving to listen to the texts, which are being written by people who were brought over enslaved, and the Indios, and then also the Spaniards who have come. You have this mescalization of the cultures, and in the end, the final line of that is saying that, even if you're a slave, no matter what you are, if you believe in Christ, then you will be saved. And that was the point of this whole journey, of the bishop's journey, is, of course, for evangelization and to try to bring all of the peoples together under the cloak of Christianity. And here's another one of the carnival images. It's my favorite. It's the crows. As you can see, there's a pipe and tabor player, and then these amazing costumes. They have crows, they have the little devils, they have bears, they have dogs, they have other kinds of, all these different costumes, and they're all wearing these kind of bells or percussive instruments on their feet. So you can see that they're playing and singing in these very intricate costumes. And then another performance practice clue, you have the gentleman playing the Baroque guitar with the neck that is back like that. And then you have a singer who is accompanying himself with palmas to keep the rhythm. And then here are the black musicians, and this is called playing and singing. And you can see the clothing that is worn there, and the instruments, big drum and also Baroque guitar. And then the marimba being played on both sides to accompany the dancers. And so here we come to our final, hopefully it's there, musical example. And it just shows you all of the different kinds of cultures that were present in the Andes at that time. Again, it's just a moment in time, frozen in amber from the 1780s. And it's the development of regional music. You can see with the raw ingredients of the different instruments and the different cultures, the Europeans and Africans and the indigenous. And you can see the beginning of the melding of the styles that comes to be what we think of now as Andean or Peruvian music. This last piece is the Tonada El Congo, a voz y bajo para bailar. And it's just written, you see a bass line and the vocal line. And the translation, I'll read to you. It says, I don't know that I find it now, but I remember that it's, I was brought here over the sea. This is first person. And it's from the perspective of a slave. I was brought over the sea and taken from my mother, my beloved mother. I was brought over the sea for no reason, leaving behind my mother, so beloved. What the Congo says, the Congo commands. There is nothing new. Nothing is new. Everything ends up being in its place. And this is a performance by a fantastic, one of my favorite singers, Susana Barca, who's a fantastic jazz singer. You may know her from her many, many recordings. And this next recording is from this album called "The Bitter Road of the Sugarcane." And she has gone back and discovered her Afro-Peruvian roots and unearthed this piece from the Codex Trujillo, which I just read the text to you of. And it's absolutely beautiful rendition of modern rendition with beautiful layering of percussion and a new bass line. And it kind of, to me, represents the future of this music. There are so many ways to interpret it. As you have heard, there were early music bands that made all these different kind of in period style obligato lines and different interpretations. And then here is the most modern Susana Barca. I hope you enjoy.
Si tiene razón, a la mar me llevan si tiene razón, dejando a mi madre de mi corazón, dejando a mi madre de mi corazón. Lo dice el Congo, lo manda el Congo, lo canta el Congo, sucun zumbambe, sucun zumbambe, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad. Que el palo de la jeringa derecho, derecho va a su lugar. Que el palo de la jeringa derecho, derecho va a su lugar. Si tiene razón, a la mar me llevan si tiene razón, dejando a mi madre de mi corazón, dejando a mi madre de mi corazón. Lo dice el Congo, lo manda el Congo, lo canta el Congo, sucun zumbambe, sucun zumbambe, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad, y no hay novedad. Que el palo de la jeringa
There it all is.
Wow, thank you, Nell. Thank you so much. This was such a treat.